Hey friends, this is Amy with AmyFerrellArt. Today we're going to be painting a bear. We're going to work on his eyes and his nose, so stay tuned and come paint with me. I use Daniel Smith watercolors mostly, and I am going to use neutral tint to make somewhat of an outline around his eye. So this is a silver black velvet brush. It's really nice because you can make thicker lines or it has a nice point to it. You can also make thin lines. I like to take my time on the eyes. So if you haven't already, if you would subscribe and give me a thumbs up, it will really help me grow my channel. In the coming days, we will have the part 2, which will be painting the rest of the bear. So I'm just being careful and going around the reflections. I'm just going to use a water-only brush and soften some of these edges. Just kind of scrubbing a little, adding a little water. It just softens the edges. Gonna get some of that paint to travel up into the wider area around his eye. Now I'm dropping in some quinacridone gold, and I'll add a little upper rose. To the part that's closest to the neutral tint. The quinacridone gold likes to travel. It kind of takes over, and next to the neutral tint it can sometimes make green. So I'm just lifting some of that gold that's spread up in the area around the eye. I'm just adding a little pink around the eye, the upper rose. Just softening that, adding some water. Adding some ultramarine blue. Let it mix with the opera pink or opera rose so we can get a nice purple. And just adding some water to let that travel a little. some ultramarine and opera rose to this area, making some purple. I like to sometimes just mix the colors on the paper. It always makes for a pretty blend. Just dropping in some water. Now it's lifting a little bit of that and softening the edges here. Now I'm adding a little more neutral tint to the edge. Kind of tapping it in. Now I'm just adding some water, lifting a little of that pigment. Just gonna make it travel down the dark area of his face. I know I said we were going to do eyes, but this is it's kind of connected the way I want this paint to travel, so we are doing just a tad bit more down his face. Just lifting some of that color so it's just focused on the edge, and now I'm adding a little more opera pink right by the eye. Touching in a little ultramarine blue. Adding some water. Move a little of that neutral. Dropping in a little more on the edges, the neutral tint. I'm going to use my grainer brush. Sorry, my hand is in the way. Here we go. Just going to pull some of the hair fur edges. Now we're going to let that eye dry, and we're going to work on the other eye. Starting with my neutral tint, just working on the outline. And just adding some water. Dropping in some neutral tint. Just adding a little more. I have to kind of go back and revisit the eye several times. Different levels of dryness. I need to add some more of the pigment. Watercolor dries lighter, so a lot of times you do have to go back and add second layers. Just my grainer brush and pull some of these strokes up into his fur of the darker color. lifting a little bit right above his eye. Adding a little water. Softening those edges. A little more purple. Just lifting a little bit of that pigment up the neutral tint and adding some purple. Now I'm working on the other side, adding some purple around his eye. Just adding some water. Lifting a little bit of that. Adding some more water. Trying to soften that edge there. I've got my grainer brush, just pulling some of the fur. Now I'm going to do a little scraping with my spatula. Depending on how wet your paper is, you can either pull darker lines, which you're actually making indentions in the paper and it allows that pigment to settle into it. Or if it's just a little drier, you can actually pull some of the pigment off, creating white lines. And the difference can be just a matter of a few seconds. So I'm getting some lighter lines here. Just kind of creating that fur texture, adding to the interest of a few more details. Just touching in a little more neutral tint in a few areas. Just adding some purple, a little more ultramarine blue in that mixture. Now I'm just adding some opera pink over it. Let it blend together on the paper and make some purple. And just lifting a little. Dropping in some more purple. Adding a little bit of gold here. Lifting a little of that. Adding a little more quinacridone or opera pink. A lot of back and forth of lifting in certain areas and then adding pigment in certain areas. Just back over to this eye, lifting a little. Add a little bit of opera pink and a little gold. And a little more neutral tint. softening that. Lightening a little bit of this area right around his eye. And just a tad bit of opera pink to that white, and add some water and blend it. So let's move on to the nose. We're going to put our first layer on the nose, and we'll go back to the eyes and do some more work. They're not finished, but I need to let those dry. So now I'm just taking my neutral tint, and we're just going to start putting the outline, basically, of the bear's nose, the darkest darks I want to get put in place, and that helps me determine, at least keeps the correct shape of the nose. And this is a silver black velvet brush, I believe a number 6, and it's an amazing brush because you can get thick lines, and then the tip of it comes to a nice point, so you can get the thin lines as well. And I try not to make any of the lines too perfect, because I don't think that any bear or animal's nose or any lines on their face are going to be perfect. So we're trying to make it look somewhat realistic, even though we have purple and pink and blue in our bear. So just going back in with more neutral tint. And I use Daniel Smith watercolors. I use some other brands, but Daniel Smith is one that's pretty consistent, and I've had really good luck, so I've been using mostly those. Just constantly checking the reference photo that I'm using to make sure I get the structure of his nose correct. I'm going in with a water-only brush, and I'm going to soften some edges. Just kind of scrubbing that line a little bit with some water. There's a bit of a purple tint to that water, but that's just because where I rinse my brushes had got some of the purple from the eyes in it. But it's okay because it will, I'm going to use some of the similar colors on the nose. So if you don't want that to happen, you can, take the break and go and refresh your water. Now I'm dropping in some purple, which is ultramarine blue and opera pink, but a little more heavy on the ultramarine blue for this area. More of a blue purple. Just laying down a heavy mix of that. Just in the darkest areas of his nose. Now I'm going in with some opera pink and adding to some of the areas around the nostril, and I'm trying to make there be a little of a dark side and a light side. So now I'm going in with more of that purple. Just trying to get the darkest areas. And now I'm just going with the water only brush. I'm going to soften those edges and get some of that to blend together. Scrubbing it just a bit. And do the same on this other side. Now I'm just dropping in some more water, trying to let the pigment disperse to the edges so we can get some nice pigmented edges. Just lifting a little bit of that. And just lifting a little bit of that color for the highlighted areas. Now I'm just touching some water on there. And just lifting a little bit of that pigment. And just lifting a little bit of a highlight around the nostril. Dropping in a little ultramarine blue. I've got just water on my brush, just kind of dabbing and blending, dropping in a little water. Dropping in some more water. And I'm just working on the shape, the highlighted area. Lifting a little pigment there. Now I'm dropping in a little bit of that purple right at the edge. Now I'm using my grainer brush, just pull some of that out for his furry texture. And now I'm going to add a little more to that eye. We're going to let that nose dry. We'll go back and touch it up, but I'm adding some quinacridone gold. I'm just removing just a little bit of that and dropping in some water. And I'm dropping in a little opera pink on this side. And then with my water only brush, I'm moving that around a bit. Doing the same over here, dropping in some opera pink. I'm adding a little more neutral tint, working on the shape on his, kind of right above his eye. Working a little bit around the eye, adding some of the darker neutral tint. Working on a little bit of it around like his eyebrow area. Now I'm just taking a water-only brush and softening those edges and dropping in some water while I'm softening. Lifting a little bit of that, adding some water. I was lifting a little, softening that area, dropping in a little more neutral tint, just trying to work on a more natural pattern. Adding some opera pink here with some quinacridone gold. Add a little, work on this other eye, softening this area right here with some water. Adding some neutral tint, just kind of dabbing it in. Now I'm going in with the water only and softening some edges. Kind of just a back and forth with lifting some, dropping in some water, adding more pigment, just till you get the look you're going for. I'm just trying to get a little more of a natural pattern where it's not hard edges, but in trying to keep with the reference photo or the darkest darks. And now I'm just lifting an area on the nose for a highlight. The nose is dry, so now I can lift some and do a little more work on the nose. Let the eye area dry that I just worked on. Now just dropping in some of that purple, ultramarine blue, and opera pink, more heavier on the ultramarine blue. Adding a little more purple, but more heavier on the opera pink side. Now just lifting a little for a highlight, going down the middle of the nose. Adding in a little neutral tint. Just trying to capture some of the features I see in the photo. Now, adding a second layer of neutral tint to the inside of the nostrils. Now dropping in some quinacridone gold. And just softening where it meets the purple. Add a little opera pink. It was turning a very slight hint of green because of the ultramarine, but the opera rose will act as a buffer, so it won't turn green. Now let's let that dry and we'll come back up here and work a bit more on the eye. Adding some neutral tint to his upper lid, just redefining that. Adding a second layer also to the outline of his eye. I'm adding some ultramarine blue just right around the highlight areas of the eye. Just softening that with some water. Sorry about my head there. I was bending down to get a closer view. Just adding another layer of neutral tint to the pupil. And to the outline of the eye. Just kind of softening that line down there under the eye. Softening that area where the dark of the pupil meets the iris. And just softening that line as well. Just adding a little water. Softening and lifting some of that pigment. I dropped in just a little quinacridone gold and opera pink, just so we don't have a real white part of his eye. It's a little pinkish tint to it. Dropping in a little water, get some pigmented edges. Lifting a little bit of color. Now let's go back down and let the eyes dry, and we'll work a little more on his nose. Now I can lift a little bit of the color with some water for the highlights. And I'm just adding a little more neutral tint, just redefining the shape a bit. You don't want to make a solid dark line around the whole thing, because that will just make it look kind of cartoonish, like it's a perfect outline. Lifting a little under the eye here, softening that. And make sure, if you haven't subscribed, if you would subscribe to my channel. It's free to subscribe, and give me a thumbs up. Shoot me a comment. If you have any questions about any of the supplies I'm using, feel free to comment and ask. We're almost going to wrap up this part, and then we will have a second part in a few days, and then we will finish out this bear. I thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I look forward to seeing you all again on the next one. And I'll see you all real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.